Hello, my name is Jeff Stamp. I'm the CCO at Anomaly New York, and this is Bridget Sponsky, Executive Director of Brand at Ally, and we are very good friends and colleagues, or clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Good partnership for sure.
So we've been working together for 3 months or so now. Yeah.
Yep.
So Bridget is leading a team responsible for the strategy, direction, and executive and execution of Ally brand, including sports sponsorships, multicultural marketing, and innovation. Is there anything you'd like to expand on regarding what you do on a day-to-day?
I just think for, in my role, it's really important that we're driving the ethos of our brand home, the inclusive culture that Ally embodies and the innovative spirit. And of course, our motto, which is deeds over words. So it's really how we approach everything here.
Yeah, and the deeds part, that since working with you all, one of the things that's been very impressive is you are out there, the brand acts, not just the talking of it. And one of those, the big one, women's sports is hot right now. There's been a big conversation, but I like to brag about on your all's behalf that you were there first, making real change where you can, and not just talking about it in, panels and whatever. You all have struck well before people were on stage talking about it here several years ago. Tell them about what you all did to really affect change in women's sports.
Yeah, I think what we've realized was that the biggest driver of revenue in sports is media. And women were receiving less than 4% of that media coverage. And that was extremely eye-opening. And so we had to figure out how do we change that, because women's sports was sort of stuck in this vicious cycle that we like to call it, which is, media companies weren't coming to the table with coverage. Brands weren't investing because the media companies weren't covering, and that cycle was translating to undervaluation for the leagues. It was translating to poor pay for the players. It was creating this ripple effect that needed to be broken. And I think, as a brand, it's always been in our nature to figure out, how do we make sure that we're positively affecting the trajectory of people's financial lives. Yeah. And so the reality was we had to blink. Somebody had to blink, and it was us. And so in 2022, we actually made a pledge. We call it our 50-50 pledge. So it's a commitment to spend for every dollar that we spend in men's sports media, we'll spend that same dollar in women's sports media. Yeah. And that commitment was made over 5 years. And that 5 years was purposeful because we knew that we wouldn't be able to get to that spend in just year one. We needed help. We couldn't do it alone. There wasn't an inventory that actually existed for us to direct our dollars into. So, you kind of fast forward since 2022, and we look at today, and just in that 2 years, we've made so much progress. We've been able to increase our spend 400%, and we're nearing a 47-53 split already.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable, and we were talking about it at lunch today. It is a tricky thing because unless you're in the business of media, you don't really understand how this whole thing works. And you were telling me about how just to crack open the way that the business has been run for so long, so many years, so many decades, that was hard work in and of itself. Talked about like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the eyeballs? Oh no, actually, there's a lot of eyeballs and interest in women's sports. It's just they don't know how to find it. Right. And that was that's basically what you all have cracked open. Yep. So, I mean, it's just so impressive because, again, there's a lot of talk, especially Cannes. And you guys have been there first.
Yeah. It's the mindset of, and any time we go into a relationship with an organization, we think about our approach as impact over assets, or like we like to say, deeds over words. Yeah. And that's really a mindset. It's the cast of mind that we kind of take with every single thing that we do at Ally. Yeah.
So sports sponsorships, you have a lot of them. Yeah. Let me read them here. I'm starting to look at my notes. There's so many. National Women's Soccer League, Las Vegas Aces, recently USGA. Yeah. How do you choose the partners that you work with?
So we are fairly new in the sponsorship arena. We started partnerships really and sponsorships in 2018, 2019. But it's not like women's sports was new for us.
Yeah.
It was always part of our sponsorship mix and our portfolio. I mean, we entered in with the NWSL. It was our sort of second, third partnership within our sports portfolio that worked really hard for us. And it was with that sponsorship where we really doubled down with the NWSL PA and started to hear from the players in terms of what they needed, which ultimately, amongst a lot of other factors, led to our 50-50 commitment. But since then, we've grown immensely. You mentioned adding the ACEs and the USGA, both the men's and women's side. And I think that's something that's really important for us is, what we're doing. We're not talking about, a women versus men thing. It is a women and men thing. So how are we creating equity? How are we fostering that opportunity for women to have that same opportunity that men have? And that's where the equity pledge comes in. But we added USGA. It's been phenomenal. A huge contributor to the fact that it was the largest purse that we've seen in U.S. women's golf history, which was a huge milestone. The ACEs are a fantastic partner. We really look at each other as an extension of ourselves. And, I think that that's just extremely important when we're talking about, authenticity and the reasons behind who we partner with. Because we've got to be marching to that same North Star. If we're not, and we're just kind of going at it in our own verticals, we're thinking about our own objectives, we're thinking about, our own hopes and how we're going to measure it, our own measurement criteria, then the partnership doesn't work. And consumers are so smart. Sports fans are so smart. They see right through it. They know when you're in it for yourself and they know when you're in it for them. And I think that's the other thing is consistency. Like we've been really consistent in terms of how we partner.
Yeah, it's like you have you don't spread yourself too thin.
Yeah.
One of the things people, finding across their intersection with values, with whether it's an athlete or a sports league or whatever, to find the consistency there. But you guys have stuck with the same with those people, and that builds trust with them. Yep,
and multi-year deals, so that we're able to continue to build and continue to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that we're coming to the table with brand X, putting our money where our mouth is.
And so who are some of those athletes? Who are some of the athletes that you've been working with and the ones that have been the most successful?
Yeah, a couple of things on the athlete note. It's an important pillar of ours because that gives us the opportunity to actually inject money directly into the female athletes' pockets where
Never thought about that.
Yeah, where they need it. I mean, we all know about the pay gap, but by doing this, that's also helping create more equity in sports. So with every partnership that we've recently signed on, we've actually created an ability to have an athlete extension. So we've signed Sydney Colson and Alicia Clark with our ACES partnership. We signed Lilia View with our USGA partnership. And so we're able to create this team ally in a sense. And it's really this combination of all these powerful female athletes that are used to be able to elevate their voices, make women's sports really hard to miss, but also to inform us and to help us understand, what else is needed in women's sports. Are there areas that we need to have our eyes open to? So it's just really been an incredible extension for us is partnering with these women athletes themselves.
Yeah, and you speak of the consistency. That's one of the themes you've heard here. Of when an athlete will do it, right? Because they don't want the one and done. Or something that's going to feel exploitive, obviously, but just to come in, have a relationship, and then move on. They're looking for longer term.
Yeah, and it's got to be longer term because if you're gonna help sustain women's sports, if you're gonna make an investment here, you got to invest in the long run because coming in and out, you're not able to actually do the work, and I think that's what makes. What our approach so special, and I think what's helped kind of craft this movement. I mean, alongside all of these incredible athletes are trailblazing the space. Architecting that movement and encouraging other brands to join in.
That's a big one. Because even your media equity. It's one thing. Ally is the pioneer for media, and I love the consistency of that's what we do. We are looking for equity in media, but Ally needs other brands to get on board with that. Have you seen others start to join and also get that game, understand the ecosystem of the business, and how the media game works, and it is gamed, and breaking that, it took a lot of guts to do. Are other brands jumping on?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen an immense amount of brands come into the space. There were brands that were in the space before too, and I think now that women's sports is getting louder and louder, you know, you're seeing those brands become even more disruptive. So we've seen a ton of other brands kind of jump in the space. I think it's been pushing on media companies too to come to the table and start covering more, adding more inventory. You know, where we're starting to see the, you know, women's professional championships finally being played in prime time.
Right.
That's been something that we were really passionate about making sure happened with the NWSL.
Yeah, and just one anecdote, because I think it's really interesting, because it's a hard thing to wrap your head around. Can you explain how you all did that? There was a time slot. It was like, how do you find this? People can't find these sports. It's not because they're not popular.
Right.
They can't find it, literally. So what you and Andrea pushed the media agent, or I'm sorry, the media channel to find a slot that was more visible.
Yeah. So you know, historically, women's sports in general are televised at off-peak time slots, and that's a lot of the reason why people can't find it. You know, you get into arguments all the time about, you know, why are you investing in women's sports? Well, have you ever watched women's sports? I've never seen a women's sports game.
Right,
Well,
it's not
because
on.
you can't find it.
Well, it's not on.
You can't find it, so they're off-peak time slots, and so that was a big initiative of ours, especially with our partnership with the NWSL, was working with CBS, who held the rights to the primetime game, and so really working with them intentionally to figure out how can we move this championship game
literally
to prime
to
time.
a better slot.
First time ever in the history of U.S. women's sports where a women's professional sports team in a sports championship was actually broadcast in prime time on network television ever. 2022. Isn't that crazy? And it was good because then you saw that follow suit in 2023, and we were able to push that agenda too in 2023. But you know, we've done a lot of other, I think, sort of really unique partnerships with some of our media partners because we've had to. We've had to. You have to get creative.
That's what's so interesting. It's creativity applied in a different part of the business. It's not creative, just we make films or whatever it is. You guys are getting creative in the way you do business.
Right.
That's aligned with your values, which actually ends up being marketing.
Right. And you understand this as a chief creative officer. There's so many ways to get creative, but yes, we've had to be really creative in sponsorship and really creative in media. You know, we worked with Disney, and we were able to find a way to actually direct 90% of our investment in Disney to the Atlantic Coast Conference for women's sports in the ACC. So we were able to actually direct those dollars there. So finding really big ways to make some waves and break the system.
And we talked about it as a marketing festival. Those are acts, genuine acts, deeds. But the modern consumer sees that, knows that you're doing that. It is you're not doing it for them, but it is haloed, it is representative of the brand's values, and consumers see that. You know, and it's it doesn't go unnoticed, and it has a big impact on the brand. It has a big impact on the brand. It has a big impact on our business, and I think that's another really important point to get across. Is it's not just women's sports is not just to do good. It is good business, 100%. You can't argue it, and we've seen it in our own metrics. Our brand health metrics are really grown double digit, hand over fist since our launch of the pledge. We've seen an increase in likability and preference and awareness, and when consumers are reaching that type of favorability, that's when we're starting to see them convert at higher rates and at a more efficient cost. So it really is paying off. Our brand actually was the fastest growing brand in the financial services category in 2023 in terms of brand value. So we are seeing the return quickly. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of pressure now that I'm working with you. I have to make sure
I know, right? Now you've got to maintain this.
All right. Okay, a couple final questions here. What's next for women's sports? That's a big question.
That's a big question.
I don't know who put that one on there.
That's a very loaded question.
What is next for women's sports, and how can brands help? Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. But I do think that, as we're a champion in media equity, and really seeing those numbers kind of go from 4% to 15% in terms of women being covered in sports media, that 15% the increase to 15% is largely attributed to a lot of emerging media channels that are coming into the mix. So you're seeing a lot of female athletes stand up media channels and partner publications. You're seeing a lot of former athletes and women leaders, women business leaders stand up these new platforms. And I think that's got to be something we all have to be mindful of, is making sure that those platforms are sustained.
Right.
Because I think, too, when women are telling the story, that the narrative changes.
Yeah.
And that's really important for young girls to hear as they're consuming media every day, right? And we're still consuming media. I mean, it has a huge impact on how we value ourselves, how we work in this world, and it has a huge impact on everybody in the way that we live. And so I think we've got to figure that out. I think that's going to be slowly but surely, but we got to figure that out. I do think we're going to see athletes, over time, really start to get into the business of women's sports. As they retire from their specific sport or their athletic, getting into the business side of things, getting into the broadcast side of things, coaching. I think all of that's going to be, a really awesome effect of the work that we're doing. And, I'm hopeful that, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we just see more and more progress. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's on its way. And I think one of the wrap it up is to be able to do this authentically, right? Sports, marketing, you have to play.
Yeah.
A lot of you at Ally are former athletes, high level athletes.
Yeah.
What did you play? What did Andrew play? What was your experience in sports? Because it translates, right? It translates. There was some stat about how many CMOs and women CMOs, or C-suite in general, were former athletes as well.
You're totally right. I mean, 94% of C-suite, women's C-suite, played sports. So sports was a part of their life.
Yeah.
And, my boss, Andrea Brimmer, she's our chief marketing officer and PR officer over at Ally. I mean, she is absolutely incredible. She's been a game changer her entire life. She played varsity soccer at Michigan State. I grew up playing softball, competitive cheer, which is completely taking off now. But I played softball my entire life, and even up and through college. From an intramural perspective, I coached through college. And beyond.
That's harder.
It is. It's incredibly hard, but it's a way to still be a part of it and still be in the thick of it, even when you're not, technically competing. But my women's sports team and my sponsorship team is really purposefully built with former athletes that get it, that are passionate about it.
Competitive.
Yeah, competitive, that understand the landscape in the industry and know how to be a part of it and actually know how to make changes.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks,
I think
Jeff.
we're pretty good at this.
I mean, we should do this more often.
I think we may take this on the road.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jeff.
it.